Guys, welcome to part 2 of lesson 12.4. Hope you guys are doing all right. I hope the week is going really well for you. So let me jump into part 2 for you. Keep this short and sweet. Today we're looking at volume of a cylinder. Last time we did volume of prisms. Keep in mind that the volume of a prism was simply the area of the base times the height. Well, the volume of a cylinder is actually the same formula. We write it differently, but it's really the same formula. We know that with a cylinder, our base is simply a circle, right? And so if we're going to say it's the area of the base, which is a circle, times the height, it's going to look like this, right? When we say the area of the base, well, if your base is a circle, we know it's pi r squared, right? That's simply the area of a circle times the height of the cylinder. So it's actually the exact same formula that we use for a prism. We just now have it in terms of a circle rather than in terms of like a rectangle or a triangle, something like that. But otherwise, real simple, because the only two things you got to know are the radius of the circle and the height of your cylinder, right? So I'm going to jump on down to a couple of these guys. Pretty much going to be a pretty direct plug in and solve. You guys know that for these, I would still always recommend that you write the formula out first. And then show what is being plugged in. So we're going to do the area of the base, which is pi r squared, times the height, which is whatever connects your two bases together, right? So as we look at this one, we're going to simply say that our radius, as we can see, is 2. And the height would be whatever connects our two bases together. In this case, it's simply a 1. So it looks like this. Now with this, do keep in mind, there's two different ways to write this answer. One of them is what we would say as in terms of pi. So if I clean up these numbers, I'm looking at 2 squared, which is 4, times 1, which is still 4. And if I just leave pi as pi and write my answer this way, that is what we call an answer in terms of pi. But if it said round to the nearest tenth, well, we can still plug that into our calculator and then round it to the nearest tenth. So we'll do that for this one. So if I throw 4 pi in there, and make sure that you round accurately, that's important. So 12.6, if we round that accurately to the nearest tenth. And we have our volume of a cylinder. So let's jump over to these. We're only looking at 3 examples today, so this will be pretty short and sweet. So as I look at this one, again, obviously it's a cylinder. So we're thinking for the volume, we're going to do area of the base times the height. Do be careful that in this one, they don't directly tell us what the radius is, right? Instead, they tell us the diameter. Well, we know if the diameter is 20, well, half of that would have to be the radius. So if a diameter is 20, we know the radius would be 10. And the height we can see is also 20. So there's our setup right there. And this would also be an easy one to write in terms of pi. We know 10 squared is 100, and 100 times 20 would be 2,000. So we could write this as 2,000 pi. And that's a nice clean way of writing the volume. But if it said round to the nearest tenth, then let's throw that into calculator. And we would call it 6,283.2. Always make sure we round accurately. So 6,283.2. And there's our volume. So we have a rounded answer, we have an exact answer. Always good to know how to do both, just so that we can always do whatever the directions ask you for. And let me give you one last one. In our part 1 video, when we did the volume of a prism, remember we saw what we called an oblique prism, right? And that was a prism that was basically like tilted. This is the same thing. This would be an oblique cylinder. Nothing really changes here. I'm still going to do my volume as the area of the base times the height. And we still can see that the radius is given, the height is given, so we're still just going to plug it into our formula like we typically would. So they're telling us down there at the bottom that we have a radius of 1.5. And we can see the height from bottom to top is 12. It's always important, then what we're doing height for volume, that our height is always perpendicular to the base, right? And so that's why you can see the way this is drawn. Obviously, it's perpendicular to the base, and so that's why we can use it as our height. And let's just go calculator on this one. So I have a pi. We got 1.5 squared times a height of 12. And if we round that accurately, we should be looking at 84.8 as our volume. There we go. So pretty basic formula today. I think you guys will be just fine on this one. But even with the simple ones, just to avoid errors, I still always encourage you to write out the steps that you're being shown here. It's great to start with a formula, show what numbers are getting subbed in, and then come up with that solution. And that's just a very, very safe approach. So that's it for this one. Talk to you next time.